Good day. Thank you for joining me for this, the 26th episode of Frankly Speaking Jamaica podcast. A special shout out to fathers. In this episode, you'll get engaging analyses and views on several issues, including Spanish Town and the violence there, the growing disorder and sense of drift in the country, and even the personal issue of how women and men are relating. But first, a look at the papers. The Sunday Gleaner takes on the news of the week, the explosion of violence in daylight in Spanish Town Market District, and the state of emergency that followed in St. Catherine. There are several angles to the story that the Gleaner takes up. Livon Barrett has an interesting related report that says in the last 18 months, law officers have tracked down nearly 2 billion Jamaican dollars related to criminal activities. The Gleaner gives space for fathers too. It features two men of vastly different circumstances and backgrounds. Corporate Area Executive Lennox Channa, and in Montego Bay, Darren Brownman Jarrett from the volatile Norwood community, and their devotion, not uncommon among dads, to their children. The Sunday Observer leads with a crime-related story too. Alicia Dunkley Willis reports that Lotto scamming cases dominate the current sitting of the Westmoreland Circuit Court. That too is the subject of the Observer's editorial. The Observer too gives space to Father's Day with a feature on Tilbert Stewart, who has struggled to give his children the best. And they feature two sporting high performers and the roles of their fathers. In the agenda section, the current affairs, Bruce Golding takes a close look at social media, but there's still no place for HG Helps in the Sunday Observer this week. Now, here is Desmond Richards on the news of last week.
Minister Babsy Grange's Mary Magdalene performance on radio last week, distancing herself from the JLPI line, the notorious JLPI line, one other gang, cannot stand up to public scrutiny. It is an indisputable fact that residents of Spanish Town and its environs for the past 2 decades have been living under siege by two criminal gangs aligned to both major political parties. The Klansman to the PNP and one other to the JLP. The Central St. Catherine Member of Parliament needs to be reminded that her name was listed as the registered owner of a motor car in which late one other gangster, Oliver Bubba Smith, was driving when he was cut down by his cronies along Whitehall Avenue on July 16, 2004. You will recall that he at the time was one of the most feared gangsters in the country. Minister Grange then told the police that her only connection to the car was that she stood as a guarantor for a loan for Andrew Bunpan Hope, another notorious one other gangster who succeeded Smith as leader. Now you will also recall that Bunpan was cut down by his cronies on Marchpen Road, an event that triggered days of bloodshed in the old capital. Now, is that the behavior of a member of parliament who has no connection with gangsters or gangsterism? Absolutely not. No way. After 60 years of independence, this is what we have. A massive failure in critical institutions in the country. Public health and educational systems are falling apart. The judiciary and the police force are limping along, while our leaders are dusting off old, tried and failed strategies in order to address the social, political and economic decline in the country. And it is not working. While all of this is happening, they are pretending as if they are in charge. No, the country is drifting afloat. We are on autopilot.
That's Desmond Richards, journalist and businessman. And so, to frankly speaking, my commentary. It's clear to me, frankly speaking, that a growing number of Jamaicans are dissatisfied, disgusted, and even sick of the deteriorating state of the country. And that's not just about the growing crime, criminality, and corruption. And those won't be fixed by a state of emergency in St. Catherine. But that's for another time. Frankly speaking, people are beginning to give up and cop out and disengage from this society that we have contributed to or allowed to run down. Many are looking elsewhere. In the last 2 episodes of this Frankly Speaking podcast, I've mentioned the state of nastiness in communities and public spaces across the country, caused partly by the failure of those in authority to collect our garbage. A rather simple, basic public health practice and a necessary thing for modern civilized living. Within hours of my podcast being posted to the YouTube channel, a friend sent me photos of a fresh illegal dump started across from his home in Montego Bay. This happens without sanction. Then I got another picture during the week of garbage piled high in the new Falmouth market on a shopping day. Frankly speaking, the proper, timely removal and storage of garbage is something we haven't been able to settle and just get it out of the way in Jamaica. Remove it from being an issue. That, like so much else, we have failed to resolve and to move on to another issue. And then the bane of our existence for the last several years, driving on public thoroughfares. We make jokes or despair about the intimidatory, deadly, lawless driving on the roads. We despair and discuss the number of crashes and fatalities. We condemn the use of right turn lanes as go straight ahead for taxis and minibuses. The use of sidewalks and hard shoulders for now not only public passenger vehicles but for private vehicles. Entire roads are considered deadly places. Frankly speaking, many private vehicle owners are now doing what they are seeing because they say there's no point in trying to keep order. It's one of the enduring pervasive carbuncles in this society and need not be. Indeed, about 4 years ago, a whole unit was created in the police force to deal with this and public order. It's the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch, PSTEB. Frankly speaking, its failure has been spectacular. And to add insult to injury, right before our very eyes is growing an expansion to the lawlessness, the nuisance effect, the undermining of our conventions with regard to lights on motor vehicles. From just before COVID, more private motorists have been fitting their vehicles with lights of all color, including the colors used by emergency vehicles of the police and ambulance services. These drivers have put flashing orange lights in their brake lights. They have installed banks of LED lights atop the dashboard or on the front of their vehicles. They have put in red filters over their indicators. They have attached lights under their vehicles. For weeks, people were being stopped on the Queen's Highway in St. Anne in response to flashing blue light, only to be robbed. Head of PSTEB, ACP Gary Mackenzie, even put out a video 2 months ago reminding people that the practice of attaching these lights was illegal, and he warned that action would be taken. Nothing has happened. And vehicles with illegally mounted lights, also with red and blue of the emergency vehicles, are seen night and day. Another classic failure of PSTEB and policing in general. Frankly speaking, it's realities like that that show that the state is failing, practices that are either illegal or inimical to the welfare of the state, out in your face behavior. These lead to the sense of drift towards the precipice and the race to the bottom, the entrenchment of slackness. Our political leaders, our leaders of business and industry, our leaders in civil society rarely take these on, which suggests it's all normal to them anyway. And that leads to despair and a sense of helplessness and disengagement. Here is Crystal Cameron with her take on interpersonal relationships, sex, and its values in this society.
I feel that mindset all derived from women wanting man to spend on them. Let me see how much you want to spend on me first. Before me even give you the chance, the opportunity to have sex, or put us in a sexual type of sex. Yes, true.
You know, Jamaican men don't really understand the concept of dating,
put on such a pedestal, the pedestal. I say, yo, you not get close to my bedroom without you spending money.
Men don't understand. You guys don't understand the concept.
I feel that mindset.
That right there is something that many of us have heard from many different Jamaican men. And what it comes down to is essentially being told that you ought not to value yourself as a woman in any way. There's nothing special about you. There's nothing that is worthwhile about you. You should just go ahead and go along to get along and give yourself freely. No society can survive this kind of mindset from its men, because this is a society that has no value for women. This is a society where men are oversexed. This is a society where men feel as though to be loved by a woman is for a woman to show you that she's willing to accept every and any lengths of disrespect and disregard from you. This is a society where men aren't there to protect their daughters from the same mindset that they perpetuate. This is a society where you're going to look your daughter in your face and say to her directly or indirectly that, listen, sex is as casual as a handshake. And as far as having sex with man, anybody you feel like, anybody will send you a message, anybody will say, sup. Nothing isn't special about you. You shouldn't treasure yourself. You shouldn't expect anything from a man. Whatever happened to providers and protectors? You can't provide and protect for a woman or a family with this mindset. And so that is why we don't have families like we used to in Jamaica. And I have to ask you this, men, are you willing to tell your daughters that they should consider themselves worthless, that they should consider themselves cheap, common, like dirty water in a gutter? I'm asking this question to you, Jamaican men. What kind of society are you leaving as a legacy for your children?
That's Crystal Cameron, creative and CEO of Crystal Cameron Designs. "60 or 70 years ago, Jamaica was a vastly different society. Alcana Rule transports us across decades to the riverside, where the community was on show in the 1950s.
In my community, Monday was wash day. The women would march to the river. They brought with them wash tubs, wash pans, clothes basket, scrubbing board. Some of the poorer ones use the brown soap, and as two other special soap at the time were Guinea Gold and Canon. A detergent was not known in those times. By mid-morning, they were filled with people, teeming with life. There were also the little children, not yet of school age. And the main thing that happened there was a great amount of gossip that took place. And those were forms of entertainment because there was no radio yet, no newspaper or television. So the riverside was a center of gossip. You would hear why one child was fair and the other was dark in a particular home, and why not even one child in that home resembled the father. Everybody knows that Miss Gal's sickness is not normal. It is Miss Gatty set Duppy on her. You don't hear what happened? Duppy licked Mas John last night and lean his head and swell up his face. And they spoke about everything. Mas James Donkey had Kobe last night. Mas John Coe have calf. Imagine nice looking man like Jakey going to take up the Longmouth gal down the road there for married to. Then there were the real troublemakers. I knew two of them when I was a child. They would pick fights with several of the other women, but they were not interested in throwing blows. What they were interested in was quite unusual, is ripping off every piece of clothes of their opponents and then chase them out of the river. There was a house near the river. The lady's name was Miss Etelda. She had to run out so often with a sheet to wrap up the women who were running away from their tormentors. They were naked and could not walk on the road like that.
That's Alcana Rule, author and storyteller. That's it for Frankly Speaking Jamaica podcast this week. Thank you for joining us. Please share and comment on the channel. And if you have not yet done so, please subscribe. Until then, I'm Franklin McKnight.